work in game-based learning and facilitates escape rooms, and she is a senior lecturer and researcher at the Central European University in Austria. Dr. Irene, over to you.
Thank you very much and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to facilitate this session or this workshop today, and thank you for choosing this session. I know it was a tough choice between the three parallel sessions, but thank you very much for being here. And I quickly want to start to say that our workshop today is really going to be on basic principles of game-based learning. So we are going to look at some of the content and we are going to start to develop a basic educational escape room or treasure hunt. Now, maybe if I can start with a disclaimer to say, I am not a gamer. I don't play Candy Crush and Monopoly and any of those games, but I do see the value of educational games, and that's why I use educational games in my workshops. And maybe then also just for you as the participant, this is not a high-tech workshop. So if you are skilled with designing games and you use different apps and platforms, this might not quite be the workshop for you. It might be too basic for you. But if you are new at this and you are starting on this journey, then hopefully this will be of value to you. So if I can quickly tell you what we're going to do today, before I ask you to introduce yourself, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself as well. We have quite a packed program for today. So before our break, we are going to look a little bit at the theoretical basics of this. And this is really just touching on some of the theory. And I'll give you some examples from my previous work at the University of Pretoria, but also some examples of lectures I'm working with currently and some of the content they've created. And we will definitely have 2 breaks in between the workshop. And then after the break, we are going to play a game, an escape room game, and I'll explain more to you about that. But we are going to play this in team context, so please don't disappear after the break or just exit the workshop. Please come back, please play the game, and then we will do another short break, and then we will start to storyboard your own game, hopefully. But the real thing that we want to do today is to start you on the process of developing your own game. Now, if I can quickly start to tell you a little bit about myself, and as you can hear from my accent, I'm really from South Africa. And about 2 years ago, I moved to Austria, where I work at the Central European University, where I teach PhD students how to teach, and I do a little bit of faculty development as well. And we have a very interesting university. It's small, it's a private university, but our students are from about 150 different countries, and our lecturers also from 40 to 50 different countries, depending on which time we look at our compilation. So we have really a lot of different cultures, different interests, different experiences that people bring to the class. And this is important for game-based learning because not everyone sees fun and games in the same context. So if you use escape room games or games in your teaching, then this is something that you need to consider as well. Now, I teach, as I said, I teach in the Certificate of Higher Education. It's an 8-credit certificate, and our credits work a little bit different. In South Africa, I know your credits is 10 notional hours for the students, or 10 student input hours. Ours are a little bit different. Ours are between 50 and 60 hours. So our credits are a little bit heavier. And the certificate course we are teaching is layered or scaffolded. And we start with a course in didactics, so how do you teach, then more on how do you facilitate learning, and then we have electives and eventually a portfolio with all the artifacts that they create as well as the game go into the portfolio, which they then narrate and then submit as a final capstone project. But I then teach in one of the electives. I teach game-based learning to the students, so I take them through this process in 6 weeks' time, from the theoretical underpinnings up to the point where they have a finished game that they then submit as their final assignment or assessment for the course. So today's workshop is really as I said, touching on some of these points, but hopefully then guiding you in the process of developing it. So now you know who I am. Can I quickly ask you, and maybe in the chat, to just quickly type who you are, from which university are you, and maybe we can skip some of the other questions, but just why do you want to use game in your facilitation? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to type it, and then I'll quickly read it on the other screen there. So if you see me looking that side, it's the screen there, to see who you are and why do you want to teach with games. Okay, welcome, Natasha. Okay, so we have a senior learning designer here. So luckily, if we get stuck, we can ask Natasha for some input and some support and help here as we design our games today. Anyone else that feels comfortable in just saying hi, who they are, why they want to use games? Rochelle, welcome. Ah, Regency Business School. Nice. Leonore, instructional designers. Oh, so we have quite a few learning designers in the group here. Wonderful. I'm going to give you about a minute or two more maybe to type there, and then I am going to move on. And it is fine if you are not yet comfortable to type anything in the chat. Vinay, e-learning designer, academic digital content developer, learning design. Okay, so we have a great many learning designers here. Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. So now I have a bit of an idea of who we have in the room. Great stuff. So let us then continue. Instructional designers, idea. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So there are a lot of people currently in the room with a lot of experience, and I think if we harvest and harness this experience and the skills that you already bring to the room, we can create something extraordinary today already in our workshop. But those of you who are not currently into instructional designing and not into games as much, please don't despair. We are going to start at the very basics, and we are going to work through this today. So maybe as a start, I've listened to a webinar last night as well, and it seems sometimes that people use things like gamification and game-based learning interchangeable. And for the purpose of today, I just quickly want to differentiate between what I see as gamification and what I see as game-based learning. And our workshop today is going to focus on game-based learning. So if we think of gamification, this is where we use elements of game thinking into our activities that is not necessarily games. So here we think of adding some badges and leaderboards to our games. And this is when we use things like Blooket or Cram or Kahoot to just introduce this element of fun and games into our teaching. If we then look at game-based learning, this is much more comprehensive. So in game-based learning, we use the entire game to reinforce this learning. So we want to immerse the learner into this experience from the beginning. So they play a crucial role in this game and in this learning. And very, very important, and I'm going to stress this a few times today, is that in game-based learning, there is a specific learning outcome that needs to be met. And this is also the question I ask my students when they design their games, and I'll show you the document that I use for them as well, is which learning outcome will this address? So what do you want to achieve, and how will you know that the students has achieved this? So with game-based learning, our students learn as a result of the game. And I'm not saying that in gamification they don't learn, but it's difficult sometimes to create these teachable moments always with gamification. When game-based learning, because it is very often self-paced and we personalize and individualize the learning, the student can go back and forth and think and explore, and then as a result learn as they do this journey. So in game-based learning, we also then help them to develop these transferable skills or portable skills or graduate attributes. We can give it any name. I kind of stick with the transferable skills because it gives me the indication that they can use it elsewhere. So things like problem solving, critical thinking, communication, teamwork, cooperative learning, all these skills we can develop as the student play this game. And again, it depends on how we design the game and how we build this into different phases of our game. Now, maybe I can quickly ask you again, and I promise this will not be death by polling this workshop, or keep on asking you to put things in the chat. But for now, can you quickly just in the chat add what type of fun activities and more specifically games do you use in your training? And again, I'm going to give you a few minutes to just pop it in there. Aha, we've got quizzes, we've got Jeopardy, Kahoot, Plickers, Classcraft, nice. Scenario-based games, that is very nice. Online escape rooms, nice, Annie. Treasure hunts, Kahoots. Creative 30 seconds Pictionary, nice. Storyline for most games. I love Storyline. H5P also. Who done it in Rise? Oh, so there are a hangman. Oh, nice. Crossword, branching stars. Okay, so we've touched on a few of the apps and things that we can use. And today I'm going to try and use mostly free apps. Things like Rise Storyline is really great, but if you don't have an institutional subscription or your own subscription, it makes it a little bit more challenging. So for today, I am going to focus mostly on free apps, and with everything that's free in life, there's always a limitation. So sometimes you can only use 3 or 4 iterations of it or 4 times, but we will focus on the free things that you can use when you design your games. And I will share with you a repository of apps that I have compiled that you can use also if you want to look at some of the apps that you can use when you create your crossword puzzles, your branchings, or your hangman, or your quizzes that you use then in class. So maybe a little bit of background of how I came to use games. And as I've said at the beginning, I'm not a gamer, so I don't play the snakes and ladders and Candy Crush and everything, but educational games really, I like it, I get it. So in my previous job at the University of Pretoria, I was the educational consultant there, and one of my self-given jobs was to catch lecturers doing good and great and creative things, and then get them to come and share this at our monthly brown bag lunch, so that they can share these innovative, creative things that they've done, but also lessons learned from it. So sometimes we will share the not so great things that we've done, so that we've learned lessons, so other people should not do the same. But most of the time, it was really a celebration of doing great and creative and innovative things. So the first introduction for me to game-based learning was actually Provadner Cordier. He teaches pharmacology, and he has the game The Misfortunes of the Morrisons. So every week, the poor Morrisons will contract one or other horrible disease, whether it is diabetes or hypertension or STD, but they will contract some disease. And then in class, the students have to solve this, and they have to cure the Morrisons before they can go home. Now, obviously, you construct it in a way that they can do it before the class finishes, but they have the scaffold. So every week there will be something for the Morrisons. And he introduced me to Dr. Clarissa Sutherland, and she's an anthropologist. And she had this game of bones, game that she play with the students, but also a treasure hunt that she does, where she takes the migration maps and she superimposes it on the campus map, and then she sends the students on this treasure hunt to find clues and everything. And then she introduced us to the concept of escape rooms. And I must say, it was amazing. It was amazing to see how adult, mature lecturers played an escape room during a brown bag lunch, and how competitive we are in these games as well. Then we had Dr. Mel Coetzee, and the two of us had a discussion. She had to do a revision class on neonatal jaundice. Now, those of you who are not familiar with the medical terminology, that's when the baby is born and is yellow and you want to unyellow it again, and you just want to make it healthy. So she does the lecture on neonatal jaundice with the students, and she had to do a revision session with the students. Now, at best, a revision session is not always exciting for the students. They've already done the content. They are medical students. They are highly competitive, and you have to grab their attention. So she created this entire escape room to do this activity with the students, and I will show you some photos of it a little bit later on. Then the pandemic hit us, and we were stuck with a situation where our medical students did the first 6 months of their training or their education on one campus, and then the next 6 months on the medical campus. And part of that second 6 months was a module that they had to pass that was on the basic concept of the campus. So who do they find? Where do they go? Who do they consult? Where's these labs and things like that? And because they couldn't physically be on campus, we created an escape room for them with Google Maps and challenges and things, and how they navigate the campus map. So to introduce them to the campus, but also to the functionalities and to the important people that they have to meet and see during this campus orientation. And the last one I want to share with you is something that we did for the School of Health Sciences and Public Health. And we created an escape room for the lecturers and the admin people in the school. Now, if we look at things like assessment policies, this is not the most exciting topic, and we know as lecturers and as faculty developers, we all love reading assessment policies. Not. So we had a challenge that there were so many policies and guidelines and standard operating procedures, and because it was overwhelming, people did not necessarily read all of the policies, and that created loopholes and created inconsistencies at times. So we took the policies and we created a in-person with a digital component escape room for the lectures, where we well, forced them to kind of, but where they had to interact with the policies in order to escape the room. And I will show you some images of that as well and tell you a little bit more about that. So if you then look at this few examples that I gave you here, all of these activities had a story. It had a narrative. If you think back of our definition of what is game-based learning, where we say we immerse the student or the learner or the player from the beginning into this story where they want to be part and parcel of it and where they play an active role in this activity. And although it was fictitious, it was still based in the content and the context of their situation. And in all of these activities, the transferable or the portable skills, things like critical thinking, problem solving, communication, was developed in our students, and we instilled this in our participants. So now, based on that, I used stories, I use games, I have a teaching philosophy of ludic pedagogy that I use when I teach, and I import this or incorporate this in all of my teaching, whether it's a workshop or a course that I facilitate for students. And this is really not a new idea. Using play and educational games to teach and to facilitate learning, if you go back and go from Plato to Piaget, they all saw the importance of play and playfulness and humor as well in education. And if I can sum it up, play is really a fundamental human need and right. And as children, when we grow up, we learn by playing, and then we send our students to university, and that's where fun goes to die. That is where we take all the fun out of learning, or often take it out of learning, and we give them this elaborative assignments. Very often they cannot see the purpose of this, they cannot see the added value of it. And if you think back to our keynote speaker of this morning, that is why they sometimes, not always, sometimes cheat, and why they don't see the importance of our assignments and our activities that we let them do. So using game-based learning and incorporating it in a way to teach them things from threshold concepts to policies, principles, is really a much more engaging and valuable way. Not the only way, but it's one of the ways that we can help students and guide them in this learning process and facilitate the learning for them. Now, if we look then at the benefits of game-based learning, and they are really numerous, and I have just taken out a few, and I want to touch on 3 of these benefits. And the first one is that we can really personalize and individualize the curriculum for our student. If we think of students who learn faster than compared to our students who needs a little bit more time to learn, that if we use something like game-based learning, that the students who know the content will maybe go faster, spend 10 minutes on the game, where the student who needs a little bit more time and support might spend 30 minutes or 40 minutes on the game. But at the end, they will still reach the learning outcome and the learning will have taken place. In our game-based learning, we also create a safe space to fail. And some of you wrote there that you use scenario-based learning, branching scenarios, H5P to create these scenarios. And the nice thing here is that our students can try something, or our participants can try something, and it's not a real patient that died, or it's not a real bridge that collapsed if they made an incorrect calculation, or when they do something that is not the standard way of doing things. And they can try and see, does this work, does it not work? Okay, it doesn't work, or it didn't work. Let's retry it. Let's ask our peers. Let's consult. Let's problem solve. And let's try again and see, voila, we can try it again. And I think for me also, one of the big things in game-based learning is this concept of social learning. And again, it depends on how do you create it. And when we start to conceptualize our game after our lunchtime break, you will see this is one of the questions we ask. Is this going to be an individual game, or will they play it in team context? So will they work together, or is this something that they do and they discuss afterwards? But there is a component of social learning. And even if we think of what Johannes Cronje said in the discussion forum or the plenary session after the keynote, that students want to, they compete, they learn, they help one another, they want to be the best at something. So how do we then build this into our games? Now, having said that, there are great many benefits and there's a lot of value in game-based learning, we also need to acknowledge that there are some challenges and some concerns with game-based learning. And one of our concerns, and again, I'm going to touch only on 3 of them at this stage, is if we look at our signature pedagogies, the way we teach and learn in a certain discipline, that very often, and I think some of you who are in learning design that works with the subject matter experts have most probably come across this in your work, where they say, but this is not how it's done in our discipline. Our discipline is a serious discipline. There's no place for games and fun. And I want to say, yes, there is. But also, if I think in my own context here, things like political history, philosophy, environmental science, that this was not always the approach to teach the content using game-based learning. So how do we as educational consultants, learning designers, or just faculty members in our own department convince our colleagues and our students that this is a didactically sound way of learning and of facilitating the learning? And obviously this will not be the only way, but this will be a component of teaching and learning. And then I think one of the greatest dangers is that we neglect the learning outcome, that we do not focus on the learning outcome, that we create it for fun and games, and we forget that there's a specific focus of it. And again, as I've said in one of our plenary sessions, this is what I ask my students always, or everyone that creates a game that I work with. What is the learning outcome? What is the learning that needs to take place? What do you want to achieve with this game, apart from the portable skills or the transferable skills in our students? So what is the behavioral change we want to instill or we want to facilitate in our students? And then I think one of the greatest concerns or negatives here is that people sometimes create the game, we let the students play the game, but we underestimate the value of debriefing. So we do not bring them back in the room and do a debrief and take them out of their roles. And this is important for scenario-based learning, for role-playing, but specifically for game-based learning. If you have to take on a different role, if you have to take on the role of the villain or the role of the timekeeper or whatever your role is, and how do you debrief them if they didn't manage to escape your escape room, or if there was conflict in the escape room? And I'll talk a little bit about that later on as well. But given all this concern and these challenges, this should not prevent us from using this as a teaching approach and as an approach to facilitate learning for our students. We just need to take these into consideration when we create our escape rooms. Now, in designing our escape room, and I will, again, we'll talk a little bit more about the design principles a little bit later on, but Mohsen, and every time I pronounce his surname incorrectly, Memon, is one of our key opinion leaders, or a key opinion leader on LinkedIn that I follow, and he gave some tips and things for us to consider when we design games, and I used his tips and I added a few of my own there. But his recommendation is that when we design our games, that we start from the start to think, who is our audience? I mean, and this is not the rocket science. When we create a course, when we create a workshop, when we create a conference presentation, this is the first question we ask: who is our audience? So what do they need, and how will they engage with our content? So is this novice learners? Is it undergraduate students? Is it our PhD students? Is it our established lecturers that will attend this and do this game? So who are our audience? And that then links to the next three things. Why is this game appropriate for learning? So not everything can be gamified. And this is a discussion I had with some of my colleagues a while ago that said things like gender-based violence, things like end-of-life decisions, although it can be built into scenario-based learning, these are not topics that I would put into a game, a fun, a escape room. I would be very reluctant to put that into it because it might take the seriousness of the topic away. So this is a really important question, and it links to one of the other points of ethics, and I'll come back to the ethics in a few seconds. But is this appropriate for the learning? And then, as I've said a few times, what learning outcome will be addressed and how will I integrate this into the learning experience? So will this be part of the prepare phase before they come to class? Johannes created the homework before class, so to just make sure that if the threshold concepts are covered, that everyone is on the same page, or will this be in the middle of the module to see whether they can apply some of the principles already and that you can scaffold the rest of your teaching on it? Or is this going to be a standalone game that they're going to play as part of your faculty development that you are going to do? So where does this fit into your bigger picture and in your story of success in your training? That then links to our design and our mechanics as well. So how will we design our game? On which platform will we design? Because that has implications for the type of challenges and riddles that you want to import into your game. And then we need, and this is very important, what are our accessibility and our inclusivity features? And we cannot address all of them in all of our games, but we do need to address the majority of them and make a disclaimer if we cannot address them. If I think of a game which is really highly based on visuals, that students need to look and identify the different colors and the different components, that color blindness or color sensitivity might be a problem there. And we need to say that this will be a challenge. So how will we then change this, or how will we incorporate this? And then what is the ethical considerations here? So again, if we look back of gender-based violence and things like that, that this is not an ethical topic to have on game-based learning. If we think of things like trauma-enforced pedagogy, things like slavery and war, that we need to be very, very careful if that is really appropriate for a game. Again, not saying scenario-based learning it can be used there, but if I think of a game, and for this workshop I'm really focusing on a game, so is there ethical considerations in this game for us? And then we have to decide, how will we track the learner's progress? And do we want to track the learner's progress in the game? Or will they do their own tracking? Will they know I'm at challenge 5 of 12? And you will see when we play the game after the break, I am not going to tell you how many challenges there are. I'm going to say, there are a number of challenges. There's some hints on how many challenges there are, but this is part of the challenge and the riddles that you have to find out. So you have to decide, and this is something we also, again, after the game, we are going to discuss. Was that frustrating to you? Was that not? How will you use that experience when you create your own game to say, I was frustrated that I didn't know how many challenges there was. So in my game, when I created, I would tell the students, you are now at challenge 5 of 12 in the game. And then also, how will you give feedback to your students? Do you want to give feedback? And in a game, the feedback mechanism is really important. You want them to know, okay, I have solved this riddle, I can move on. You don't want them to come to the end of the game and to say, but oh no, there was 5 more things you had to solve. You cannot escape this game. You have to go back and go and find them again. So you want to know, yes, this worked. I can progress. And again, depending on how you create your game, you need to decide whether you want to build in teachable moments in your game. And this is a lesson I've learned when I did this workshop in New Zealand a few months ago, that people are very competitive in a game. So you cannot build in teachable moments where you want people to stop and reflect and learn the lesson extensively. If there's a time limit and you have very competitive people in your group and they want to win, they want to escape the room first, then this type of teachable moments you might want to limit them to short things of why this was incorrect and give them another option to try the answer again and then answer it. But I will not give them put in the game, go and watch this 10-minute video or go and read this article and come back. So how do you give feedback and how do you create these teachable moments in your game? And then, these are the 3 that I thought was that I wanted to add to his bouquet of tips is, what is your timeline when you develop this game-based learning? And this is something people sometimes ask me when we do this workshop and they play the game, to say, how long did it take you? And some of the games I say, well, it took me 3 days and 3 nights. And then the anti-plagiarism game I'm going to share with you a little bit later on took me and Trevor more than a year to create, because then I worked for three hours, and then a month later he worked for an entire day on it, and then I worked a little bit. So it depends on when you have time to work on it and what you want to achieve. So I think if we sat down and we worked on it, might have been able to create it in a week. Although I think some of our soundboarding was very valuable over the entire year, but very few of us have got a year to create a game. We sometimes think, okay, so next week I want to do this, hopefully not tomorrow, but how much time do you have to develop this game, and what skills do you have? Last night I converted my game that I created on Google Forms. I put that in Twine, and it took quite some time to put it in Twine and to learn all the skills of how to do it. So do you have the skill sets to create it on Write or on Storyline 3 or on H5P, or are you just going to create it on PowerPoint and Google Slides, which is also fine, or Google Forms? What skill sets do you have, and which skill sets do you want to develop in creating this game? And then I think very important as well is what is your budget? And budget is not just money, definitely, but also your time that you have to budget. But do you have budget? So do you have a subtle grant that you can buy the software? And is the software an annual subscription, which is always a bad idea? Or can you buy the software and it's a once-off, it's a perpetual license, and you can keep on using it? So, and who do you have to negotiate with to get this budget? Because it's very demotivating if you have budget and you create your game and then the budget runs out and you want to make some changes to your game, but you do not have access to the editor mode anymore, and you cannot make these changes. And you've spent all this time, this entire learning curve on learning it, but now you cannot reuse it again. So these 12 things are really important for you to consider when you design your game. And then, and please give a shout in the chat if there's any questions. I just quickly want to look here at the chat to see if there's anything specific. Okay, no. But please give a chat, and I will ask the moderator as well to keep an eye on if there's a chat, or if I talk too fast. Please, I know I talk very fast when I get very excited about a topic, so give a shout if I'm too fast or my accent is too heavy, and I'll I'll try to talk a little bit slower. Okay, but if there's no questions in the chat, I am going to continue. So we get two types of games. We get the student-created games and the lecturer-created games, and there's value in both of them. So for us as lecturers, if the student create the game, it is easy for us to see, do they understand the principles, the concepts that they want to test when they create the game. So if they create a game on, say for instance, pharmacology, or on what would be another game, on a disease, we can see the way they structure the game. Do they understand the pathology? Do they understand the treatment options as when we look at the game? But we can also create in the game to see, can they answer it? Can they apply the knowledge? Can they solve the riddles when they play the game? And I'm going to go show you a few examples of student-created games and some of lecturer-created games, from basic to a little bit more advanced as well. So if we start to look at the student games, and this is a game that one of my students in the game-based learning course created, and for this one they only had 4 weeks to create it. From the day we started the course till the end, they had 4 weeks, and then we adapted the course and made it 6 weeks later on. But anyways, this was hers, and I asked her if I can share this with you, and she was very happy for me to share it with you. So Lisa created a course in history, and it was part of the global war, and she uses Google Slides. So I told them they can use any platform they wanted to use, and from Google Forms, Google Slides, they could use H5P if they wanted to, but she created it on Google Slides, and you don't have to read what's on the screen. This is just her background. But what was nice for me here, she combined the Google Slides with the Google Form, and there's some pros and cons to that. But she also incorporated the keywords, that if they get stuck, they have a list of keywords that they can go back to. So she had her introduction, and then she had the story and her interactive components in the room that the students can play with, and the discussions that goes on in the room. So you can see two-dimensional, very basic, relatively easy to create. So if you want to know more about her game, you can chat to me, or you can chat to her and ask her if you can actually look at her game. She said you are more than welcome to contact her, and she will show you her game. Now, taking it a little bit up, and this was not expected in the 6-week course. Let me just maybe say this up front. And this was not an escape room, but this is also a student-created game, choose your own adventure, choose your own path, interactive book that a student created. We got a small grant, an Amical grant, and we contracted 2 PhD students, and they took a chapter from their dissertation, so their literature chapter on their dissertations, and they created this interactive book. And one of the main things here is history is in the eye of the beholder. It's who tells the history. If you think back of the cartoon, history is written by the survivors. And if you think back of your own history in your own country, the history depends on the person who tells it. So the perspective is different. And this is the message they want to give to their students as well, to the reader. So they have different routes. It's still historically correct facts that they have, but depending on who you are in Juan Manuel's game, it is who you are, whether you are Raymond or the other person's name I can never pronounce as well, and you will experience history from their point of view. As I said, all of these things, historically correct facts, and they created it on Twine, and I'll show you the Twine platform a little bit later as well. And they created all the images with Midjourney Bot. So we had a 2-month subscription to Midjourney Bot, and they created their images. Flora created her on the Ottoman history, and hers was one player that emerged, but it depends on who the player talks to. They get a different viewpoint of the history. And what was nice, when she piloted it with the students and with family and friends, at the end of the game, they asked her, but okay, so who killed the person in the game? And she said, well, that's for you to decide. You've got all the historical facts now, and you have to interpret and decide, who do you think killed it? And depending on, again, with whom you talk to, you will think someone else did it. And again, we come back to it's in the eye of the beholder. So one story, one thing, different endpoints. So this is really an interesting way of telling a story, but also to have branching scenarios for our students. And this is an open educational resource, so you can go and have a look at it. It's on our institution's website, but you are more than welcome to share it and ask or let other people have a look at it and see what they think. And please let me know if you looked at it and not during the workshop, after the workshop, just drop me an email, tell me what do you think of this resource. So this is how it looks on Twine, and then they incorporate the images in there as well. And if we have time, we will look at Twine today. Now, this is quite a high standard to measure up to. So now I want to show you lecturer created games, and these are games that I've created, and it start very basic to a little bit more complicated. So you as a learning designer or a game-based designer or a faculty member needs to decide where on the spectrum do you feel comfortable, where do you want to grow, where do you want to stretch yourself a little bit. And my invitation to all of you are always, if you want to take hands and want me to work with you on some of these things, you are more than welcome to. If you want me to connect you with someone else that you think, oh, I love those games that Juan Manuel made or that Flora made, I'll really happily connect you to them as well, or introduce you. So give a shout if you want me to do any introductions for you. So back to the lecturer created games. Now, these are things that I've created. So the first one is really, really basic. And this is just a point and click. I've created it in Genially, and I'll show you how I created it in H5P as well. So in this one, instead of giving the students a one-pager of a patient's history, and this is where this is the background, he visited this place in this country, this is what his ECG looks like. I created this interactive image, and the nice thing is it's adaptable, so I can change the students, the patient scenario as I go through. So if the student click on the little yellow triangle, it will open up the chest x-ray of the patient. If they click on the little ECG button there, it will open the 12-lead ECG. If they click on the suitcase, it will open the Google map. And in this case, I used Soweto. So they can actually look around in Soweto where they are and say, okay, the patient visited this house or this church or this hotel or whatever in Soweto. And then further on, if they click on some of the other contexts, which medication, they can hear the heart sounds, they can see the edema on the foot if they click on the image of the foot. So you can make it as extensive as you want to. And this is also a nice activity to give to your students. And this can be from a patient assessment to a painting to I have things on a poll, on a graph with not necessarily the best example, but Biden and Trump's election results, and I asked students to put things there on the diagram or on the painting as well. So there's a lot of things you can do, and you don't have to create it. Your students can create it as well. Now, the same one I did in H5P as well, and you see it looks a little bit different, but it's basically still the same things there. And obviously, you can do it in any of the other platforms if you want to create it as well. Then we get to the escape rooms, and with riddles and tricks and red herrings and hidden messages. And this is, I think, one of the things that I really love creating is this escape rooms. It takes me forever because I get sidetracked a little bit and I get overly excited, but this is really something that I enjoy making. Now, if we think of escape rooms, this is really not that new. 45 years ago, or nearly 45 years ago, it started actually as point-and-click adventures in video games. And then in 1988, the first text-based escape room was developed. And in 2007, the first modern escape room developed. And what is nice about these escape rooms is that it is immersive and the student play an active role. So they cannot progress if they do not actively participate in these games and in this escape room. But you have to create it. You have to create the riddles, the locks, the puzzles, the red herrings. But it needs to be an adventure for students. And this is the first one then one of the first ones I've created, and this was just again on Google Slides. And this is the point and click, just like with H5P. And I linked this as Lisa did with her game that I showed you earlier on. I linked it to a Google form so they can click and they can find the riddles and the questions, and they answer it on the Google Forms. You can incorporate it in here. For this example, I didn't want to incorporate here. I wanted to show the students that this is a possibility of how to do that so that they can create their own ones. Then this was the policy assessment one that I told you about. And this was the first draft. It looks a little bit different now, but we had the escape room, the digital one on Google Forms, but we had it in a venue. So we had the venue, we had the drinks, the mocktails, the eat, the treats, we had the beach towels, the music, the vibe, the challenges, and this was really, really amazing escape room to do. And the results and the feedback from the participants was that this was an extraordinary learning experience. So you can take something as dead boring as assessment policies and create something exciting and engaging for your participants. Then this one I really want to show you. This was the neonatal jaundice escape room, and the students said it's fine, we can share the photos. So if you look at the images there of how the students sit and how they actually engage with the content, how they talk, how they try to solve this. And for me, what is really, really nice on this images is this group here was not the winners. I think they ended third in this competition or in this escape room. But just the high fives, the wow, the ecstatic excitement that they've escaped, that they've solved the riddles. It was just such a wonderful experience. And what was also nice is that afterwards, when we asked the students for feedback, the feedback was, can we have more of this? This was the most fun learning. Please do this again. So if we think of students asking for more assessments, this is kind of exciting that we said, yes, we have arrived. They bought into the concept. But it did take some time. And again, if you want to know more about this one and the QR codes we used and the tips and the riddles and everything, please feel free to talk to me or to Dr. Coetzee as well. Then this example, and this was not one of the examples I gave at the beginning of the session, but this is a lecturer here at CEU, and she is teaching copyright law. So what she did is she created a world in Minecraft, and she created artifacts in this world, and her students had to go into there as active players, and they had to either create their own artifact or they had to make a mesh up of some other artifact, and then they had to see how does the copyright law link to that, or how can they interpret it, and how do they write copyright law for their digital artifact, and can you make a mashup? And I think that links a lot to again our keynote speaker this morning about how do we link copyright to AI and to digital content that we create. So this was quite an interesting learning experience as well. And her publication will come out. We've got something in our newsletter, but she will publish on this as well. And then my game again, and this is something I've created first in PowerPoint, and then Terence and I worked at it. This is the one I said that took a year to create. We've put it on Storylines 3, and this is an anti-plagiarism game that we've created, and you are more than welcome if you want to try it, and if you like it, you can use it for your students as well. Again, it's an open educational resource. But here you as the student or as the player emerges in the game, and you have to solve the riddles, and you as the lecturer can then decide you want them to do it as individual players or as a group activity. But what we built in here is that you can choose a companion for you on this journey. Now, you do not necessarily have to have it avatars. I know with race and gender and all those things, it's always a tricky thing. So you can have a cat, a dog, an elephant, and a giraffe, or whatever alien you wanted to, that they can choose to journey with it. For this background, ancient Rome, we chose these avatars, but they can choose it, and depending then on their choices they make, these avatars sometimes can give them feedback. They say, oof, not the best choice. Oh, wow, well done. And it just brings in a little bit of a different dimension into your game. So if you want to play it afterwards, you are more than welcome. Just maybe a tip, you will go into my sandbox, you can play the game there, and you will see there's a little button there that you can just click, and then it makes it, oops, full screen for you. And you, with your control plus and control minus, also you can zoom it that it fits your screen. And once again, if you played it, please let me know if you liked it, if you didn't like it as well, or if you have some feedback. And what was interesting here is that someone gave me the feedback, and it's valuable feedback, to say, we can see you are not a native English speaker because the way you phrase some of your things there. And that is true. That is true. So maybe for you, when you create your games, as well, to think and to consider, how do I quality check and quality assure and language edit the content in my game, and how do I pilot it? And this is the last game I want to share with you before we take a 15-minute break, just to recuperate before we play the game. This is one of the off-the-shelf games themed hospital, which I have never played. I have to say that. But Trevor, the guy that worked with me on the anti-plagiarism game, he uses this game to teach a management students some management principles. So once again, it's a fake world with fake diagnosis in a fake hospital, and there's the safety in it, but the management principles that they learn here is really solid principles. And you are welcome to look at his publication as well if you want to know more. So before we take a break, any questions, concerns, please put it in the chat there. And thanks for Pam. Yes, having students create these things is really, really, really valuable. Having them apply the knowledge. I cannot agree more with you. So I am going to send you for hopefully a 15-minute break, and please grab some tea, coffee, and please come back, because when you come back, we are going to put you in breakout rooms. And I know many of us really, really hate breakout rooms, but we are going to ask you to play this game in groups, so that you can help one another and support, and that you can escape the island. But I will tell you a little bit more about the game when you come back. So for now, please, I'll start the timer if it works. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't work. So let's see if it works. It's working. Great stuff. So I'll see you back in 15 minutes. Please grab something to eat and drink, and please come back. Hello, everyone. I hope we are all back and refreshed with a beverage. Okay, so I see we lost some brave souls over the break time, and some had to go to meetings, and some had other engagements. But I hope most of you are back, and yeah, that we can continue. So for the, I have talked a lot, and I love talking, but I think I have now talked enough for the first hour. So what we are going to do now is we are going to play the game, and I am going to ask the moderator to put you in breakout groups of 4 or 5. Let's make it 5. Yeah, we'll make it 5, and maybe if there's two, yeah, 5, because someone always disappears during the games. The moment we say join the breakout rooms, they're going, no, that would not be me. So please don't do that. But let's try groups of 5, and I will remain in the main room. So if you get stuck, then you can come and ask me a question. So what we are going to do now is first we're going to play the game for 60 minutes, and then I will give you 15 minutes to just recover, celebrate, whatever, if you have escaped, and then we will come back. So if you finish the game before the 60 minutes is over, please, by all means, take a break or come back to the main room and tell me you are done, and then you can take your a lunch break, and then we'll come back. So I'll come back to this URL now, and I post it for you in the chat as well. But first, I want to quickly tell you about the game that we are going to play. And let me, if I can just get my cursor to stop here in the chat box. Should work the game as well, but before you click on the game there, so this game I put it in Twine last night, but it for the purposes of this workshop, and I'll give you access to the Twine one later on, we are going to play it on Google Forms. Now when we come back after the escape and after the break to our main rooms, I am going to ask you to say, tell me what was the good, the bad, and the horrible of this game. So maybe a disclaimer before the time. I purposefully put some things in there to frustrate you and to pull your attention away. So those things are built in. So when we come back in the room, we will discuss that. So make a side note of those things. Then, because it is on Google Forms, I make use of third-party apps. Sometimes you will open another window and go to another window, and we will discuss the didactically soundness or the frustration level of that, or the not frustration level of that, as well after the game. So you're going to be in groups of 4 or 5, as I said. The person who is going to do the screen sharing, please need to have a Gmail account, because you have to sign in with Gmail to get your on Google Forms, and some of the other apps that I'm using needs a Gmail account. I've tried to work around it, apart from the signing up into this form, that if you do not have access, or if you do not feel comfortable signing into the third-party apps, that there's other ways of working around that. So that is a possibility. Then you can just find it. As I said, the person, and I'll show you now how we're going to do the role allocation. The person who is sharing the screen, please needs to read out loud unless you as a group decide that each one of you are going to read your own one. But I don't want you to all open the game in your own browser windows, because I have found in the previous workshop that really worked not well. People were not on the same page, literally, and there was some unhappiness in the group. So you want a happy group, so please maybe just share one screen or just work on one document for now. You can always go back afterwards and do it. So I'm going to ask you, if you're in your groups of 5, and there will be instructions again, that you put your names in alphabetic order. So Anna, Beatrice, Karina. And the first roll, there's going to be a spinner, and the first person that it stops on, that Anna will get that role. And the second thing, Beatrice will get the second role, and so you continue. And you will see the spinner have a little cross. And if you have someone's name, you can click the cross, and that will remove that that person's name from the spinner. Previously, it wasn't there, so that's a new update. So that is nice. So what you're going to see is that you'll get the spinner. It will take you, it's a third-party app once again. And if you get the role, as I said, of share screen, you will read out, you will be the narrator. And if you don't have a flair for the dramatic, please negotiate with someone else to take the role for you, because we want the drama and the excitement in here. So let's go back to that previous screen. So you can scan the QR code with your phones, but it's really difficult to do this on your phone. So this is kind of a backup, but otherwise, please copy the address there, and then we will send you into breakout rooms of 5 per breakout room. And I might pop in there, but I'm going to try to actually stay in the main room, so that if you get stuck and you want to phone a friend, please come to the main room and ask me. So any questions, concerns? I don't know if you can put on your mics currently. If you can, you are welcome to unmute and ask a question. And maybe when we come back from the break, I am going to ask if we can make all of you moderators that you can put on your mics. But in the groups, hopefully the breakout rooms, you will be able to use your mics and your videos. So questions, concerns? We'll leave the compliments for later. Questions, concerns? Nothing? Going.
Silly question. I'm sorry if it
Yes,
was part of previous presentations. On the slide it says BORSs. What are those?
Oh, breakout rooms. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
A while ago, I actually at the same, I was looking at a program like Bors. I know about Bors, but Bors, and then you're sorry, you're going to breakout rooms now. So see you again, and I will see you then in 60 minutes. And so it's now 11:45. So you've got an hour for your game, and believe me, it's enough. And then you have a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back at 1 o'clock to the main room. But I will be here. And again, there's enough time, so please don't rush too much. But you need to progress. But please enjoy. Okay, so please take a okay.
Hi, Dr. Irene.
Hi, how are
I'm
you?
so sorry. You look like you're explaining something in one of the rooms. I just wanted to bring you back to the main room. Should I take
Thank
you
you.
back?
No.
Okay.
Please. I'd rather stay in the main room. Now, I was actually trying to say hello to the other 2 people in the room. So, no, this is fine. Thank you. And I want to pull this screen to this side, then I can actually see look into the camera. Okay, thanks a million for all the help so far. It seems as if everyone is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the only concern might be if they fall out of the breakout room and how to put them back into the breakout room.
Let's see. There's 2 people joining in the main room. Please let me know if you'd like us to send them to the other rooms.
Francie, can we send you to a breakout room? We are playing a game. We are playing the escape room game.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry, I'm sort of dropping into the middle here.
No worries. We just started after the break, and they are playing an escape room in groups of 5. So you are just in time if you want to join them. So I'm going to ask Nandini to quickly send you
All
to a
right.
breakout room if you want to play. Ah, there you go. She did some time travel. Okay, thank you. I think we can stop the recording now because for an hour there's nothing going to happen. Can we pause the recording?
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks.